Gossip in the music world is like a feedback loop on an amplifier. It starts small and then gets louder and more distorted until you can't tell what the original sound was. Heavy metal is famous for this, with stories so crazy they have to be fake. But the thing nobody tells you is, sometimes the truth is even stranger. 1. Marilyn Manson's missing rib. Many people are crazy about Marilyn Manson, the shock rocker who dominated the 90s with his spooky look and controversial music. He built a career on being the stuff of nightmares for parents everywhere. But perhaps the most famous rumor about him had nothing to do with his songs. You see, for years a story went around that Manson had one of his own ribs surgically removed. The reason whispered in school hallways and online chat rooms was so that he could, to put it mildly, bend in unusual ways to perform acts on himself. This is why this is huge. It was the perfect rumor for his persona, a story so bizarre and creepy that it just had to be true, right? It perfectly matched his public image of doing anything for shock value. The tale spread like wildfire, becoming a piece of pop culture legend. The thing nobody tells you is that this rumor got so big, it defined him for a generation of people who had never even heard his music. They just knew him as the weird guy who supposedly took out his own rib. In countless interviews, Manson has denied it, laughing it off as just another myth. He once said if he really did that, he would have saved the rib in a jar to show people. But even though it's been debunked, the story just won't go away. It's a testament to how wild his image was. What many overlooked is that the rumor itself was the ultimate performance art. While one rocker was rumored to have taken something out of his body, the next one was accused of adding something truly bizarre. 2. Gene Simmons's Cow Tongue. Let's talk about the band KISS. They were pioneers of the rock and roll spectacle with their explosive live shows and iconic face paint. Each member had a persona like the Star Child or the Spaceman, but the most famous of all was Gene Simmons, the Demon. His character was all about being intimidating and a little monstrous, and his signature move was sticking out his incredibly long tongue. It was so long, in fact, that it started one of the most unbelievable rumors in rock history. The story goes that Gene Simmons' tongue wasn't all natural. Fans whispered that he had gone to a doctor and had a piece of a cow's tongue surgically grafted onto his own to make it longer. It sounded completely insane, but you see, people wanted to believe it. His tongue was measured at an incredible 7 inches long, which is way longer than average. For many, a bizarre farm animal surgery was the only explanation that made any sense. The rumor added to his larger-than-life persona as the Demon. It made him seem not quite human. Of course, the story is completely false. Gene Simmons was just born with a very long tongue, a genetic fluke that he turned into one of the most recognizable symbols in rock. He has always found the rumor hilarious and never misses a chance to show off his famous asset. It just goes to show that sometimes the simple truth is a lot weirder than any story people can make up. A long tongue is one thing, but our next rocker was rumored to have used his mouth for something much, much grosser. 3. Ozzy Osbourne snorting ants. Ozzy Osbourne, the Prince of Darkness, is a legend for many reasons, from his groundbreaking music with Black Sabbath to his reality TV show. But he's also famous for a lifestyle that was, to put it mildly, completely out of control. There are countless stories about his wild antics, but one stands above the rest as the most disgusting and unbelievable. The legend took place in the early 80s when Motley Crue, a band famous for their own brand of chaos, was opening for Ozzy. The two acts were trying to outdo each other with crazy behavior. According to the members of Motley Crue, one day by a hotel pool, Ozzy, having run out of other substances, knelt on the ground and snorted a line of live ants up his nose like they were a line of powder. The story became an instant classic, the ultimate tale of rock and roll excess. It was so perfectly Ozzy, a man who had already made headlines for biting the head off a bat. Snorting bugs just seemed like the next logical step. For years, nobody knew if it was true or just a tall tale told by another band to boost their own reputation for craziness. What many overlooked is that Ozzy himself has a very fuzzy memory of that entire decade. He's said in interviews that he honestly doesn't remember if he did it or not, which in a way makes the story even more believable. Motley Crue, however, swears it happened. It remains one of rock's grossest and most debated legends. Ozzy may not remember snorting ants, but there's no way our next artist could ever forget the rumor that followed him his whole life. 4. Frank Zappa's on-stage snack. Frank Zappa was a musical genius. He was a composer, a guitar god, and a fearless satirist who wasn't afraid to make fun of anyone and everyone. His music was complex and often very strange. But for all his incredible musical accomplishments, the most famous story about him is a completely disgusting one. It's a rumor that has stuck to his name for over 50 years. The story claims that during a live concert, Frank Zappa engaged in a gross-out contest with another musician, which ended with him eating actual poop on stage. This rumor is one of the most persistent in all of music history. You see, it was just believable enough for the time. The 60s and 70s were a period of pushing boundaries, and stage shows were getting wilder and wilder. Artists were doing shocking things to get attention, so the idea of a weirdo artist like Zappa doing the grossest thing imaginable didn't seem too far-fetched for some. The thing nobody tells you is that Zappa was actually a total professional who was very serious about his music. He was also famously against illicit substances and the wild lifestyles of many of his peers. Zappa spent a huge chunk of his life denying this story. He would get asked about it in almost every interview. He explained that the story likely got started after a concert where he mentioned that a venue smelled bad. The story morphed and grew over the years into the disgusting legend it is today. It's a prime example of how a lie can travel around the world while the truth is still putting on its shoes. While Zappa was falsely accused of being unsanitary, the next musician was rumored to be the high priest of an unholy church. 5. King Diamond's Unholy Alliance. In the world of heavy metal, few artists are as theatrical as King Diamond. With his signature face paint, bone microphone stand, and a singing voice that goes from a deep growl to a piercing falsetto shriek, he is a one-of-a-kind performer. His songs are like little horror stories, full of ghosts, haunted houses, and dark rituals. His image is so dedicated to the dark side that it's no surprise a major rumor has followed him for his entire career. The whisper in the metal community has always been that King Diamond is more than just a performer. The rumor is that he is a high-ranking member, maybe even a high priest, in the Church of Satan. To many fans, it made perfect sense. His lyrics were full of satanic themes. His stage show was like a black mass, and he carried himself with an air of authority. Many people were crazy about the idea that the leader of their favorite band was a real-life agent of darkness. This wasn't just an act, it was his real life. The truth is a little less dramatic, but still interesting. King Diamond has confirmed that he is a follower of LaVeyan Satanism, which is less about devil worship and more of a philosophy focused on individualism and personal power. He's not a priest and doesn't lead a congregation. He is simply a believer in a particular philosophy that fits his artistic vision. What many overlooked is that he uses these themes to tell compelling stories, not to recruit followers. King Diamond's stories were about fictional dark forces, but our next rumor involves a band accused of putting real dark messages into their music. 6. Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Hell. In the 1980s, a wave of panic swept across America. Worried parents and religious groups became convinced that heavy metal music was a tool of the devil, used to corrupt the youth. And the ground zero for this panic was one of the most famous songs ever recorded, Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven. The rumor was that if you played a certain section of the song backward, you would hear a hidden satanic message. This practice was called backmasking, and it became a huge phenomenon. People would sit by their record players, carefully spinning the vinyl in reverse, listening for whispers from the underworld. Preachers and television hosts played the supposed messages to horrified audiences. They claimed the backward lyrics said things like, "Here's to my sweet Satan," and "I sing because I live with Satan." This is why this is huge. It turned the biggest rock band in the world into supposed messengers of evil. It was terrifying for parents and, frankly, pretty cool for a lot of rock fans. The band, of course, denied it completely. They called the accusations ridiculous and said they had better things to do than spend hours in the studio trying to record backward messages nobody could hear. Scientists and sound experts have since explained that the human brain is designed to find patterns and that people were just hearing what they wanted to hear, a phenomenon known as audio pareidolia. But the damage was done. The rumor of satanic backmasking would haunt rock music for years to come. Hidden messages in a song are one thing, but some believe the passing of our next rocker was the result of a hidden curse. 7. The Curse of Bon Scott. Bon Scott was the original frontman of AC/DC, the voice behind classics like Highway to Hell and TNT. He was the ultimate rock and roll singer, a charismatic wild man with a mischievous grin and a powerful, gritty voice. In 1980, at the age of 33, he passed away after a night of heavy drinking in London. The official cause was listed as an accident. But you see, in the world of rock and roll, nothing is ever that simple. Almost immediately, rumors began to swirl that there was more to the story. Some whispered that Bon had gotten involved with dark arts and that his passing was the result of a curse. Fans pointed to his fascination with Aleister Crowley, a famous occultist, as proof. Others had darker, more earthly suspicions. The thing nobody tells you is that Bon was found in a car belonging to a friend, a man who gave conflicting stories about that fateful night. This led to rumors of foul play, that perhaps Bon's end was not an accident at all. These stories have become a permanent part of the AC/DC legend. The band was on the verge of becoming the biggest in the world when Bon passed, which made his timing seem all the more tragic and mysterious. The band, with their new singer Brian Johnson, would go on to record Back in Black, one of the best-selling albums of all time, as a tribute to their fallen friend. But for some fans, the questions about Bon Scott's final hours will never fully be answered. Bon Scott's final night is shrouded in mystery, but our next story is about a plane crash that was surrounded by rumors of something more sinister than a simple accident. 8. The Ghost of Randy Rhoads. Randy Rhoads was a guitar prodigy. In a few short years, first with the band Quiet Riot, and then as Ozzy Osbourne's solo guitarist, he completely changed the game. His blend of classical music training with heavy metal shredding was unlike anything anyone had ever heard. He was a rising star, destined for greatness. Then, in 1982, at the age of just 25, his life was cut short in a horrifying plane crash. The official story is tragic enough. The band's tour bus had stopped for repairs in Florida. The bus driver, who had an expired pilot's license, took a small single-engine plane for a joyride with Randy and a makeup artist on board. He started flying dangerously low, buzzing the tour bus where the rest of the band was sleeping. On the third pass, the plane's wing clipped the top of the bus, sending it spinning out of control into a nearby house, where it exploded. But not all things are what they seem. Rumors immediately started that this was no accident. Some people on the tour claimed the pilot had been using illicit substances that morning and had been acting erratically. There were even whispers that he had been arguing with his ex-wife, who was on the tour bus, and that he might have been trying to hit the bus on purpose. The rumor turned a tragic accident into a potential act of malice. To this day, fans and fellow musicians talk about the immense talent that was lost and wonder about the true dark nature of that terrible day. The mystery of that crash still haunts fans, just as the mysterious identities of our next band drove their fans wild with speculation. 9. The real identity of Slipknot. When the 9-man metal band Slipknot exploded onto the scene in the late 90s, nobody had ever seen anything like them. It wasn't just their chaotic, super heavy music, it was their look. Every member of the band wore a terrifying mask and a numbered jumpsuit. They never showed their faces in public and refused to use their real names in interviews. This complete anonymity was brilliant marketing. It made them seem like a terrifying, faceless force of nature, and it also led to some of the wildest rumors. With no faces to attach to the music, fans let their imaginations run wild about who could be under those masks. This is why this is huge. Before they became famous, one of the biggest rumors was that Slipknot wasn't a new band at all, but a secret side project made up of members from other huge bands who wanted to play heavier music anonymously. People would analyze every detail, from a musician's height to their playing style, trying to match them to a famous rocker. Another persistent rumor was that the members were constantly changing, that the masks allowed them to swap people in and out without anyone knowing. It was like they were a collective, not a band. Over the years, the members' identities have been revealed, and the original lineup is well documented. But for those first few years, the mystery was a huge part of their appeal. It proved that in metal, the image can be just as powerful as the music. Slipknot hid their faces, but our next band was at the center of a gruesome rumor so dark it almost defied belief. 10. Mayhem and the Brain Stew. The story of the Norwegian black metal band Mayhem is one of the darkest and most disturbing in all of music history. It's a tale of church burnings, violence, and extreme ideologies. But the most stomach-turning rumor to come out of that scene involves the band's singer, a man who went by the stage name Dead. In 1991, Dead took his own life in a cabin in the woods. What happened next is what cemented Mayhem's infamous legacy. When his bandmate, the guitarist known as Euronymous, found the body, his first act wasn't to call the police. Instead, he went to a nearby store, bought a disposable camera, and took pictures of the scene. One of those graphic photos would later be used as the cover for a bootleg album. But the story gets even darker. The rumor that has circulated for decades is that Euronymous did more than just take pictures. It's said that he gathered pieces of Dead's brain and made a stew out of them, which he then shared with other members of the black metal scene as a kind of ritual. This is a truly horrifying story, and one that sounds too evil to be true. The band members who were around at the time have given conflicting accounts. Some have hinted that it's true, while others have dismissed it as a sick rumor designed to build their terrifying reputation. What is known for sure is that pieces of Dead's skull were collected and made into necklaces, which were given to musicians Euronymous deemed worthy. Whether the stew was real or not, the story shows just how far that scene was willing to go to be the most extreme thing imaginable. A rumor about a ritualistic stew is horrifying, but the next band was rumored to be putting on a very real, very dangerous ritual every single night on stage. 11. Rammstein's fiery antics. The German industrial metal band Rammstein is world famous for their live shows, which are less like concerts and more like a full-scale military invasion. The main attraction is the fire. They use so many pyrotechnics that the lead singer, Till Lindemann, is actually a licensed pyrotechnician. His signature move involves him wearing a giant flamethrower mask or shooting fire from his arms. The shows are so intense that they sparked a very specific rumor. Fans started to whisper that what Rammstein was doing on stage wasn't just a clever illusion, The rumor was that the fire was real and that Till was really setting himself and others on fire night after night. You see, people have been hurt at their shows. In 1996, a flaming beam fell onto the stage, injuring several fans. Stories like this fueled the idea that the band was willing to risk it all for their art. There was a popular story that a fan once tried to light himself on fire at a show to imitate the band. The truth is, Rammstein's show is a highly professional and mostly safe production. While the fire is very real, Till isn't actually being burned. He wears special fire-retardant clothing under his stage costumes. The keyboardist, Flake, is often the target of Till's flames, most famously during the song Mein Teil, where Till cooks him in a giant pot with a flamethrower. But Flake is also protected. The rumor that they are literally lighting themselves on fire is just a testament to how convincing their performance is. Rammstein was rumored to be playing with fire, but our next story involves a whole musical project that was said to be cursed. 12. The Curse of the Crow. In 1994, the movie The Crow was released. It was a dark, gothic action film that became a cult classic. A huge part of its appeal was its killer soundtrack, which featured a who's who of 90s alternative and metal bands like Nine Inch Nails, Stone Temple Pilots, and Pantera. The movie itself was already surrounded by tragedy because its star, Brandon Lee, was accidentally shot and passed away on set. But soon, a darker rumor began to spread, a rumor about the soundtrack itself. The story goes that the soundtrack was cursed. People started to notice a disturbing pattern of tragedy befalling the bands and artists who were featured on it. This is why this is huge. It wasn't just one or two isolated incidents. Stone Temple Pilots singer Scott Weiland struggled with personal demons for years and passed away. The founding members of Pantera, the Abbott brothers, both met tragic ends. Members of the band, My Life with the Thrill Kill Cult, were in a serious van accident. The list goes on. Of course, this is most likely a grim coincidence. The rock and roll lifestyle can be a dangerous one, and many musicians from that era faced significant challenges. But for fans of the movie and its music, the sheer number of tragedies connected to the soundtrack is hard to ignore. What many overlooked is how this curse added to the film's dark mythology, forever linking the fictional story on screen with the very real tragedies that surrounded it. A cursed soundtrack is spooky, but our next rumor involves a rock star who was supposedly living a complete lie about his own age. 13. Angus Young's School Days. AC/DC guitarist. Angus Young is one of the most iconic figures in rock. A huge part of his identity is his stage costume, a classic schoolboy uniform, complete with a blazer, a cap, and shorts. For over 40 years, he has been duck walking across stages around the world dressed like a kid who just got out of class. The look is so iconic that it started a rumor that persisted for years. The rumor was that Angus Young really was a schoolboy when the band first started. People believed he was a teenage prodigy who was much, much younger than the other members of the band. To many, it was the only thing that explained the weird costume. It wasn't a gimmick, it was just what he wore. This story was especially popular in the band's early days when they were still a bit of a mystery. It added to their rebellious, youthful energy. The truth is much simpler. The schoolboy outfit was a gimmick from day one. It was actually his sister's idea. When the band was starting out, they were trying to find a unique look. His sister suggested he wear the school uniform he had just worn that day, and it stuck. Angus was not a teenager when the band got famous. He was in his early 20s. The rumor was completely false, but it worked wonders for their image, making them seem even more like a gang of unruly kids breaking all the rules. Angus Young wasn't really a schoolboy, but our next rumor connects an angry metal singer to a surprisingly sweet pop star. 14. Dee Snider's Christmas Secret. Dee Snider is the loud, proud, and very blonde frontman of the 80s glam metal band Twisted Sister. They were known for their rebellious anthems like We're Not Gonna Take It and I Wanna Rock. Dee was the ultimate rock and roll rebel, a guy who famously went to court to fight against music censorship. So you can imagine the surprise when a very weird rumor started circulating on the internet. The rumor was that Dee Snider had secretly written some of the biggest hits for the pop superstar Celine Dion. It seemed impossible. What would a heavy metal screamer from New York have in common with a Canadian power ballad queen? Fans of both artists were completely baffled. Many people were crazy about this idea, imagining Dee Snider sitting at a piano, writing heartfelt lyrics about love and loss. It was the ultimate odd couple. Well, this rumor is actually sort of true. To put it mildly, it's been exaggerated. Dee Snider did not write Celine Dion's biggest hits like My Heart Will Go On, but he did write a Christmas song called The Magic of Christmas Day, God Bless Us Everyone. He originally wrote it as a gift for his wife. His producer heard it and, without telling him, sent it to Celine Dion's team. She loved it and recorded it for her 1998 Christmas album. So, while he's not her secret songwriter, the metal god Dee Snider is the man behind one of her holiday tunes. A secret Christmas song is a fun surprise, but our next rumor is about a secret that was much more personal and much more painful. 15. Rob Halford's Big Secret. Rob Halford, the singer for the legendary band Judas Priest, is known as the Metal God. He's one of the most influential vocalists in the genre, with a powerful voice and an iconic look. You see, it was Halford who introduced the now standard heavy metal uniform of leather and studs to the scene. For years, he was the picture of macho metal power, but behind the scenes, he was hiding a huge secret. In 1992, at the height of the band's fame, Rob Halford suddenly quit Judas Priest. The official story was that it was due to creative differences and his desire to start a solo project. But the rumors started flying immediately. Insiders whispered that the real reason was far more personal. The rumor was that the band and the record label were putting immense pressure on him because of his personal life. He was a gay man in the very macho and often homophobic world of 80s heavy metal. The rumor was that he was being forced to keep his true identity a secret to protect the band's image. Years later, in 1998, Rob Halford publicly came out as gay. He later confirmed that the pressure of hiding who he was played a huge part in his decision to leave the band. The thing nobody tells you is that living a lie for all those years took a massive toll on his mental health. The rumor, in this case, turned out to be tragically true. Thankfully, he would eventually reunite with Judas Priest and is now celebrated as an icon for the LGBTQ+ community in the metal world. Halford was hiding his true identity, but our next artist was rumored to have been using dark powers to get revenge on his old band. 16. Dave Mustaine's Curse. The story of Dave Mustaine and Metallica is one of the most famous feuds in metal history. Mustaine was the original lead guitarist for Metallica, a fiery and incredibly talented musician. But his aggressive personality and struggles with substances led to him being kicked out of the band right before they recorded their first album. He was famously put on a bus and sent packing. Mustaine would go on to form his own hugely successful band, Megadeth, but the bitterness over his firing never seemed to go away. This intense rivalry led to a strange rumor that followed both bands for years. The story goes that Dave Mustaine, furious and humiliated, used black magic to put a hex or a curse on Metallica. You see, Mustaine was known to be into the occult in his early days. Fans who believed the rumor would point to all the tragedy that followed Metallica as proof. From the passing of their bassist, Cliff Burton, In a bus crash, to the various personal struggles of the other members, they saw the hand of Dave Mustaine's curse at work. This is, of course, a wild piece of metal folklore. There's no evidence that any curse was ever cast. What makes the story so interesting now is that Dave Mustaine later had a major life change and became a born-again Christian. He has completely disavowed any connection to the occult. The rumor of the curse is a relic of a time when the rivalry between the two thrash metal giants was at its absolute peak. A curse might be just a story, but our next rumor is about a band that some people believe is secretly promoting a religious message. 17. The Insane Clown Posse's true mission. The Insane Clown Posse, or ICP, is a hip-hop duo from Detroit that has a huge, dedicated following of fans known as Juggalos. Their music is often described as horrorcore, and their whole image is built around being scary, violent, and offensive. They wear clown makeup, spray their audiences with cheap soda, and rap about dark and twisted subjects. So it might come as a shock that one of the longest-running rumors about them is that they are secretly a Christian band. It sounds like a joke, but many people are crazy about this theory. The rumor started when fans began to analyze their lyrics more closely. Buried underneath all the chaos, they found messages about faith, morality, and a higher power. A song called The Great Milenko was said to be about God. Another song, Thy Unveiling, ends with the lines, "We're not sorry we tricked you. All the evil you've seen is a mirror of you, and it's time to change." This is why this is huge. Fans started to believe that the entire shocking ICP persona was just a trick. The theory is that they use their dark imagery to attract kids who feel like outcasts, and then they secretly feed them a positive religious message. The band members themselves have played it coy over the years, never fully confirming or denying it. They seem to enjoy the mystery. What many overlooked is that whether it's true or not, the rumor adds a fascinating layer to one of music's strangest and most misunderstood groups.